I've spoken to the people who live there, I know them really well. They could not, under any circumstances, because of their circumstances, afford to buy. 3 doors up in an identical house, it was sold last year for £3.1 million. When you're talking about affordable, whose affordability is it? Because it's not the 5 sets of people who live in flats next door to me. It's nonsense, and they need to have those places to live. Don't take those places away from them. That is wrong. My own daughter bought way back in the 90s, 80s, God knows, I can't remember how old she is, and she ended up in Croydon. We lived in the middle of Battersea. She lives in Croydon. I call that gerrymandering or social engineering.
Thank you. Is there a question there? Do you have a question?
My questions are, 1, what is affordable? And 2, how many of you have supported the NHS and signed the pledge outside the store?
Okay, we're talking about affordable housing now. Chris.
Are we on affordable or NHS now?
No, affordable housing.
But again, it comes back to how does one afford? It's clearly rhetorical and it's a nonsense, isn't it? How on earth can anybody afford a £3 million or £150,000, £200,000 property when you're earning, what's the average wage in London? 30,000, the median, 35,000 maybe, times 3 or 4 times. It's very, very difficult. All I can suggest, for example, is to certainly get the young people working, gives them some experience. And for example, they've got a scheme in Denmark, for example, whereby professional people, tradespeople, would give their time, perhaps after normal working hours, go to an institution, a factory, a school, a polytechnic, which would be paid for. I'm just trying to give 1 or 2 suggestions.
In houses, you mean?
Positive. Pardon me, madam?
Do you mean they're going to build houses?
No, but they would be trained, then they would earn more money. They would be in the market, be upskilled. How can somebody afford £100,000, £150,000 property on £6-7 an hour? I'm just trying to be constructive, and we put our heads together and devise, because you're in charge. The government's made a hash of this over the last 20 or 30 years. We've got to have some constructive, open-minded discussions. It's a very, very serious issue. Who can afford that? It's a nonsense. There's no more I can really say about that. We've got to debate this.
I'll debate this.
Did you sign the pledge?
We're not talking about that right now.
We'll talk about that next.
Affordable housing.
First of all, the affordable housing, we need to increase the supply. We've committed to building more houses than any of the other parties. We've got plans for that, and it's costly. We will be unveiling a plan tomorrow, which is rent to own, which is where your rental payments will go towards the cost of the property, and over the course of 30 years, which is similar to the sort of scale that a mortgage would be required, we will own that property. It won't be mortgages, it will be a rent to own scheme. We're also, I'm just talking about renting specifically now, I know it's not specific, it's not affordable housing, but we're providing schemes where the government will provide loans for people to afford their deposits and first month's rents that they're required, to allow them to get out of home, to allow them to stand on their own feet, and to allow them to make that first step into the property market.
Thank you. Lois, I'm going to have to ask you, please. Lois.
Thanks. I think really the 2 main Green Party policies that none of the other parties have would be the solution to the problems that we're talking about, this thing about affordable housing. And as I say, that is judging your affordable housing on median earnings and not on the market. It's the market that is the problem. Just one other point is in terms of housing, one of the other things that's happening is there's an awful lot of regeneration happening. And we are losing social housing and affordable housing through those regenerations. If I can let you know that in London, 50 estates with over 300,000 homes have undergone regeneration in the last 10 years. And while the total number of homes has almost doubled, there's been a net loss of 8,000 social rented homes. So again, it's a question of proper planning, proper regeneration, and thinking about the common good. Housing is not for profit, housing is for living in.
Very briefly, four policies from the Labour Party. One is that we'll double home building, which I said earlier. The second is that we will introduce 3-year tenancies for renters. The third is that we'll scrap lettings agents' fees. And the final one is that as a champion for the local community, I will make sure that property developers contribute their fair share of affordable housing.
Thank you. Jane.
I think I started this episode. I just want to make one very simple point, I suppose, which is that actually, it is really important that we talk about this issue. Undoubtedly, it's an important issue, and there are many people affected by it. There's 72,000 electors in Battersea. Many of them do live in the homes the ladies of Barbour was protesting about. Many of them live in the high-end homes, the lower end of market homes, and everything in between. And all of us are seeking to be Member of Parliament for all of those people. And I think it's really important to actually remember that. We are seeking to represent Battersea as it is today, with all of those different ranges of incomes, all those different kinds of housing stock, all those different people doing all those different jobs. And what I hear is anger and bitterness towards many of the people who actually live here, who are the ones we're seeking to represent. And I don't think you could be a good Member of Parliament if that's how you feel about many of your constituents.
I agree, Jane, but that's why Labour would scrap the bedroom tax, which penalises the Conservative Council's plans to shift poor and vulnerable people out of Battersea because they can no longer afford to live here. Yes, we're for everyone, we're for the very wealthiest, but we're also for the very poorest, and current Conservative policy does not support them.
Well, benefit of the audience, I think there's around 240,000 people in Wandsworth, and 1,500 households have been affected by the spare room subsidy. I think it's probably around 500 in Battersea. I agree, it's an important issue. Many of those people I've actually helped when I was a Member of Parliament in my surgeries. But I think it's important to get those statistics and that sense of perspective.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much. Listen, we've had 45 minutes on housing. We've got plenty of other issues. I'm going to move on from this. We have a question from David about law and order and young people. David, this was a question that was submitted earlier.
I would like to ask the panel, since 2011 we had the incident in Tottenham, that gave sort of precedent. Disbelief in the police force. So we're talking about now the introduction of police body cameras and helping give out evidence. We have law and order with gun crime, so we had the shooting. We had law and order, we had the incident last year with the gun crime incident in Queenstown, it shocked a lot of people. So what would the panel do as a national government to help deal with gun crime and introduce more police body cameras?
Lois, would you like to respond?
Yes. This is why we know austerity doesn't work. In Battersea, we have lost the Battersea Park Adventure Playground, where there were trained play workers who worked with the older children, those children who need that kind of mentoring to keep them out of crime. We're about to close the Battersea Sports Centre, another place with play workers that support the young people growing up. The Kingham report after the Clapham Junction riots said that what we needed was more sports facilities for young people. And the answer to your problem about crime and young people is to give them something to do, to give them a place where they belong, to allow them to be part of our community, not to shut down their facilities and not to leave them without support. The Green Party would bring back EMA, that's the Education Maintenance Allowance, which would help keep people in training and education for longer, and that would help. And the Green Party would bring in the living wage, which meant that when people did get jobs, they would be earning enough to respect their jobs, stay in work, and become settled members of the society.
I think Lois has made some excellent points, and I'd just build on those to answer directly the question regarding police body cameras. I think they're a very good idea. I think that they build trust between the community and the police force, which is often the cause of disruption and of disturbances. It's that lack of trust and that lack of understanding between the two parties. So personally, I'd support those. I must confess I'm not entirely sure of Liberal Democrat policy on them, but I'd support them entirely myself as the MP for Battersea. I think that it's worth remembering that crime is down over the last 5 years. Violent crime is down, and whilst there may be a perception that things are dangerous and things are difficult, I think it's worth remembering that those are the key facts. I think that talking again about the Battersea Junction riots is interesting. The sense of community afterwards was as reassuring as kind of the actual riots themselves were worrying. I think it highlighted the lack of social cohesion that often occurs